Hello. Today I will be giving my final presentation for this class. This is my vulnerability assignment. I hope it was a good semester for anybody, including the professor. Here we go. So here's a little information about me. I'm Parker Smith. I'm the one presenting to you, and this is the class that it's for, Cyber 4220. Now let's really get into it. So what is the purpose of this assignment? The purpose of this assignment is to identify vulnerabilities. If you can't identify them, then you might be lost. Not saying that as like a diss to anybody, but that is the number one rule, is you have to be able to identify them. If you can't find what you're looking for, you're kind of screwed in that sense. Then the next point is you need to discover exposed services. So when you're looking for these vulnerabilities, you need to find the ones that are exposed. Then evaluate these security postures, and once you evaluate them and how you go about fixing them or making them not exposed, you recommend remediations. That's what we did in this assignment. Is we found things, we found openings and possible exploitations, and then we found out ways that we can fix them. That's the gist of cybersecurity, and that's how you should approach things. Next, we'll cover tools that we used. So first and foremost, we used Greenbone, which is a vulnerability manager. Finds all sorts of vulnerabilities and just presents them to you. Next, we used Nmap scanning. So we did scans with Nmap. Then we switched over and used Kali Linux because we worked with a different software. And ultimately, we kind of finished sorting things out as to what is more of a concern and what is less of a concern using CVSS, which is, I believe, I'm losing the C right now, but it's vulnerability scoring system. I do know that. I'm losing the C right now. Next, we're going to cover our scan methodology. So we identified targets. We scanned ports. We did service enumeration. We analyzed vulnerabilities. And then ultimately, we figured out which had the highest risk and the lowest risk. The C for the last slide was common. So it was common vulnerability service system. So it just helps you rank these things, which is kind of how we used it for the risk prioritization. So let's move on to where we found these things. First, we worked with Windows. So we used a Windows server for finding things. Let me take a sip of my drink here right fast. So in Windows, we found that the SBM was exposed on port 445. We also found that RPC services were open and that HTTP services were enabled, which is good. But then information stuff was not good. There was information disclosure, which you can't really have. You don't want people being able to just access stuff and understand what they're seeing. Simple terms. I always feel like when I'm giving these presentations that I'm having to teach it in a sense, and most people might not understand what all of the high-tech terms mean, so it's better to explain it as simple terms. So those were kind of the first things we found using Windows. And then we also found higher severity things in Windows, which again is that vulnerability on port 445. Can't have that. Then we found that in these instances with the way it was set up was that there is a potential for remote exploitation, which means they don't have to be on your system. They can be wherever in the world, as long as they have a way to connect to the internet and they know how to exploit it, they can get to your system. We found that there was outdated SMB versions, which do come with increased risk. So simple things like if you get a notification that your phone needs to be updated, you should probably update it because there's things that their team has found that need to be updated that you might not know about. I mean, that's your phone. You're not going to be looking into it and figuring out what needs to be updated. You don't work for them. So simple things as patches, like when a company or a video game comes out with a new patch, most of the time it's best to update it because you will get more protection. But sometimes, and this is you live and learn, trial and error, is sometimes the patches may not fix what they're trying to get. It may, if it's your phone, it may end up draining your battery. It may end up making it to where your phone doesn't work. But they have to at least make an attempt to close off these access points and close off these vulnerabilities. And what we saw in Windows was kind of interesting is that if you guys know what the WannaCry attack is, this was kind of a similar setup to how that was able to happen. It's basically a huge ransomware attack that shut down, I'm not going to say all of Windows servers, but like let's just say like 95%. If you had a business that ran off of Windows and you opened it up that day, well, you weren't going to be able to work because there was a ransomware on everything that had Windows. So what would we do to fix the Windows? We would disable SMB v1. We would apply security patches. Like I said, need to update things. You can't let them get outdated and then they're no longer providing you protection. We need to restrict firewall access, so strengthen those firewalls and not allow as many people or users to be able to access and change those settings. And then ultimately just limit network exposure. So that's going to kind of wrap up Windows remediation and what we would do to fix that. So you saw what went wrong with Windows. You saw things that could result of it. And you saw how we're going to fix it. So we'll move to Linux now. These Linux server findings were kind of weird, not necessarily. I thought they were going to be a little different, except for one of the main things. So SSH ports were exposed on port 22. And the HTTP banner disclosure was... I don't know how to feel about it. It told you... It gave you a lot more information than it should have. Outdated software packages. It's kind of common in what we're dealing with right now with this assignment is just stuff is outdated and it's old. It shouldn't be like that. It should most definitely be updated and be more secure. This is kind of like the overall findings, how we found these things out. So let's move to these high severity. And it was missing security headers. Forgot to mention that. Then we have these high severity Linux findings, and these were weak SSH authentication. So just almost like an open door, or if you have a screen door and you leave your house open, or your main wooden or metal door open, it's only the screen door open. Somebody can get through that. So that's a simple term of explaining it. It was at risk for brute force attacks, so people could just keep trying and trying and trying. That allowed for potential unauthorized access, and then password authentication was increasing exposure, which should never happen. So how do we fix this? We disable password authentication. We use SSH keys. We install fail2ban, and we configure firewall rules. That's a good way to fix it. You make little adjustments here and there, and they can have great impacts. That's what I've learned through this class is simple things that you think wouldn't make a big deal can make a drastic deal in the security of your system. So here is our vulnerability ranking scale. And if you have access to the paper we wrote, there's more details on what exactly falls into these lines, but this is essentially the ranking scale of how they go from critical, high, medium, and low. So yeah. Then we have the overall security assessment, what we got from everything. Systems are operational but vulnerable. Unnecessary exposed services increase risk. So if they don't need to be exposed, they shouldn't be exposed. I mean, when they're exposed, they're creating more risk. They're creating more work to be done. Lack of hardening expands attack surface. So the less how do I word this? The less precautions you have, the more attack surface there is. So if you don't have any preventions in place, it's like an open wide pasture. There's multiple routes that they can attack, and there's multiple things that they can get from all of that. But ultimately, remediation improves security posture. So the changes you make, they work. They're good. They will provide a better landscape for you, for your security. So here we have lessons learned. The importance of patch management. Update your systems. That's simple, easy to do. There's nothing you have to do for that. You press install, you put in your password, it installs. That's what they're made for. There is a giant risk of exposed services. So if they shouldn't be exposed, don't expose them. I mean, that's the point of identifying the vulnerabilities. If you figure out something's exposed, you need to fix it. You need to put in place that they're no longer going to be exposed. And that goes to the next point of value of vulnerability scanning. There's nothing as valuable as this, as being able to find these vulnerabilities. Excuse me, just had a burp. Let me get a sip of my drink right fast. Yeah, and then configuring firewall rules. I mean, personally, on what I believe in cybersecurity, I think firewalls are very good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think they are the most important, because once you have them set up pretty good, they're gonna do their job. So, not that they're not important. I think they're very important. But when they're set up, they do their job, and they do their jobs pretty well. But when you have other vulnerabilities outside of that, or you have other risks exposed outside of that, it's better to attack those and fix those than it is to worry about firewall rules. Because, like, it's almost like building up a wall. You build up your wall, but if your house is rotting, or if you have no water to your house, well, you're out of a house. So that's kind of what we got from this. I'll wrap this up here by just telling you thank you for listening. I know this was kind of a long presentation. I'm glad that people stuck it through. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me or contact the professor. I guess that's who I'm speaking to. But I just appreciate anybody who listened to this, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.